Today I want to talk about Magnolia, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. As of the time of this video, the movie is celebrating its 25th anniversary, and I feel the need to celebrate this messy masterpiece, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Many people I've talked to over the years think that this was PTA's sophomore film after Boogie Nights, and that has always grinded my gears because it's not. Hard 8 was his first film, which was released in early 1997, and is one of my favorite films that he directed. It stars John C. Reilly and Philip Baker Hall, who also appear in Magnolia. It also stars Samuel L. Jackson and Gwyneth Paltrow. I think it's one of PTA's best films, and I'd love to review it sometime. Magnolia is a mosaic of sorts about a group of people who are living in the suburbs of Los Angeles. There is symbolism throughout the entire film about random occurrences and happenings that are the stuff of legends. And while much of it is hard to catch, if you do manage to see some of it, then the point of the film may come into focus better. There is narration at the beginning and the end, which allows us to understand the state of the world we inhabit with these individuals. There is a non-stop feeling of malaise throughout the entire story that is never shaken. You can tell from the get-go that this will not be a typical story of life struggles that lead to a resolution of ultimate bliss. There's just something off about the way everyone is and the state of the world, even before the crazier stuff comes. It's almost like since this movie was made right before the end of the millennium, it has that dreaded sense of fear about the new millennium that is to come. But the meaning of the film is more transcendent than that. It helps put you in the headspace of these characters. We follow Officer Jim Curring, played by John C. Reilly, as he investigates a disturbance at an apartment of a woman who is uncooperative and combative. Jim finds a dead body in the closet of her bedroom. After the investigative team arrives to process the scene, we are shown the other officers conversing about what happened and who was murdered. In the shot where they are gathered around, you see that Jim is away from the circle and not being noticed by anyone, even though he was the responding officer. You can tell by that fact and the fact that he leaves the crime scene alone that he is an officer that is viewed as either a joke or someone whose opinion they do not value. A child approaches Jim and attempts to tell him who committed the crime by rapping, but Jim doesn't take him seriously and proceeds to drive away. You can tell that he is a man of honor and cares for other people's safety, but it seems no one views him as a viable officer. This comes more into focus later in the story, but if you pay close enough attention, then you can see these seeds already being planted. We follow many other characters in this movie, such as a boy named Stanley, who is a major genius, and his talents are being exploited on a game show which is hosted by Philip Baker Hall, who just happens to be dying of cancer. And the poor child is also being constantly hounded by his father that demands the highest amount of success from his son. He is so concerned with his son getting records on this game show that he forgets to show him true father-child affection. And that is one of, if not the biggest theme of this movie. To continue the father-child affection thesis, we also follow an ex-producer of the game show, played by Jason Robard, who is married to a woman far younger than he is, played by Julianne Moore, and he is cared for by a hospice nurse, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. The young wife feels she does not deserve his inheritance when he dies, as she goes through an entire existential crisis to the fact that she did not marry him because she loved him, but now she does love him, and it's just sad that she did wrong by him by cheating on him and not being the wife that she felt that she needed to be for him. She is clearly addicted to pills and who knows what other drugs, and even consults a lawyer about getting her name taken out of the will in regret. But there is no way that the dying man's son gets any of his inheritance. That is made clear by her. This leads me to the son, who is an infomercial motivational speaker played by Tom Cruise. This man is all about putting on the performance that he is a man's man, and he has seminars where he talks about having sex with women and that's all they're good for. He is interviewed in the movie about his past, but he seems to have a forward-thinking philosophy, and that looking back on the past is not something he is willing to entertain. This is obvious because he has deep resentment toward his father, and even though he does not know his father is dying, it allows us to see partially why Tom Cruise's character is the way he is. Another theme of fathers and their children. One of the most beautiful things about this movie is the editing. This film is very frantic and moves at a very fast pace, and at first, it's almost too much to follow so many characters. But it reminds me of the great film Shortcuts by Robert Altman, where that film follows 22 characters over the course of 3 hours. And it is also about the struggle of those characters in Los Angeles, just like Magnolia is. But Altman, much like PTA, manages to juggle these characters so well that you can't figure out how they did it. Even though Magnolia has so many characters and threads to follow, it's easy to follow each line without any issues. PTA can spend long periods of time with these characters, but then go back to other characters we haven't seen in a while, just in time for us to remember what their connection to the story is. I can't compliment the editing in this movie enough. I'm not even done with the other characters we meet. The host of the game show I mentioned earlier is named Jimmy. Early in the story, he goes to his daughter's house to inform her that he is dying of cancer, but she despises him and doesn't care what he has to say. This argument happens right after she had a one night stand with a man who is at least in his 50s, so clearly there are some issues between father and daughter here. To continue with the familial theme of this picture, the daughter, named Claudia, seems to be jobless and is a big time cocaine user. This woman has many demons, but she comes across Officer Jim due to her playing music very loudly at her apartment, and he responds to a noise disturbance. He is immediately smitten by her and asks her out on a date. Either Jim is clueless that she is a drug-filled mess or is oblivious because of his attraction towards her. Claudia seems very happy that she is approached by someone so genuine, but can she overcome her demons enough to even have something as simple as a dinner date? There's one more character named Quiz Kid Donnie Smith, played by William H. Macy. He was once a former champion of the game show that a great deal of the movie is surrounded by, but now he is a drunk who hangs out at a gay bar and is obsessed with getting braces for his teeth. Even though he is fired from his job, he seems to have two thoughts going through his head at the same time. One, that he was once a celebrity and he can't let go of that because his parents took something from him. And second, he wants to get these braces to impress a bartender that he has a crush on. He can't seem to stop riding on the coattails of the fame he once had, and he will go to great measures to prove that he isn't stupid. There's a lot I have omitted about the relationships between these characters because if you haven't seen this movie, I want there to be some surprises. At the end of the movie, just when it seems like all of the storylines are going to converge in a way that fits a full narrative, an event of transcendent wonder occurs which completely pulls the rug out from us. But it's not for the sake of shock value or just there for the sake of having something weird happen. It is in line with the sense of malaise that I mentioned earlier, and is also foretold in many shots and certain monologues if you look closely and listen closely enough. To quote the great Roger Ebert, it shows that the best laid plans of frogs and men go off to stray. It's a surreal ending and is unlike almost anything I've ever seen in a movie. I know this movie is a bit messy with its cohesion and that not all the threads are answered, but I think that's the point. I know that PTA himself has expressed certain regrets about this film, but I like it just the way that it is. In fact, I would say that I love it just the way it is. We live in a world where we all have problems, issues, and regrets, but we also live in a universe that is not concerned with our day-to-day struggles, and things are going to happen on a celestial level whether we have a conclusion to them or not. So while I understand the lack of closure and full cohesion does frustrate many people, including many of the critics who reviewed this film in 1999, I think the point is being missed that not all the stories need finality, or any closure at all for that matter. Sometimes all we need is the feeling. That's what I felt with all the stories after the film ended. A feeling. If you look at this outline here, it will give you an idea of the characters' relationships in the movie. It's complicated, yes, but the story does a great job explaining it to you and is easy enough to follow. But I know that some people have said that they think the movie is an incoherent mess. I think this film is cohesive and its themes are very clear, especially its familial feelings. Almost every character in the story is affected by their family, or their lack of family. My one small issue with the movie is that not all of the characters' stories worked for me, particularly the ones with Julianne Moore and her regret, as well as the one with William H. Macy's character. That one has a strong foundation, but I feel the final few decisions he makes just seem like they were there for comedy, but none of that is fatal to the film for me, just small gripes in an otherwise wonderful story of families, mortality, regret, and certainly existentialism. If you haven't seen this film, please watch it. It is 3 hours long, but it is paced so well that it seems shorter than many 2-hour films I've seen this year. I give Magnolia a very loving 4 stars out of 4. It's a masterpiece, and even though I don't know if I would say it is Paul Thomas Anderson's best film, I will say that it is one of his most ambitious films for sure. What do you all think of Magnolia? Please let me know below in the comments. I really want to review Hard 8 sometime, so I hope that I get a chance to very soon. Thank you so much everyone for watching. I also review new movies, silent films, horror films, and much more. Here are links to some of my other videos. Like and subscribe if you like. Follow me on social media if you like. And until next time, I am Ghost.